At Drummond Golf, we understand your passion.
Nice roll.
And that's because every Drummond Golf store is owned and run by a local who loves the game as much as you do.
Yeah, it's come off the face really well.
Someone who knows where you play and what you need.
Oh yeah, looking good.
With Australia's biggest range and expert knowledge.
Great. Now let's try that putter with this grip.
So if you want to improve your game, see a local expert at Drummond Golf.
Hello and welcome to episode 92 of The Thing About Golf, the podcast trying to answer the enduring question, what is it that draws people to this game? Rod Murray is my name and I'm joined on the digital blower today by my colleague John Huggan, who's in the driver's seat for this episode, a chat with 2006 US Open winner Geoff Ogilvy. Huggy, you sat down with Geoff at Augusta this year. I reckon that's a good time to catch him. His neurons would have been firing at Augusta National, would they not, given that he's a complete golf nerd?
Yeah, I mean, he and I have talked many times about Augusta. He's a huge fan. He did well there on more than one occasion. He kind of had the game for winning that tournament if he'd hang in there a bit longer than he did. But yeah, it's you're right. It's the ideal place. And the media centre at Augusta, which is outrageously ostentatious, does have a couple of rooms set aside for podcasts. So they're way ahead of the game in that respect.
How very modern of them. Wouldn't it be nice if there were others doing the same thing, Huggy? You mentioned he did have a couple of close calls. 2011, he was right there when there was 4 Australians in the mix and was stolen by a South African, Charles Schwartzel. If you'd said Ogilvy was going to win a major at the start of his career, you would have probably picked the Open or Augusta, wouldn't you? Not the US Open. He didn't have the US Open style game, and yet that's the one that he won. Absolutely
not. I mean, but then, yeah, that's true of other players. I mean, look at Phil Mickelson's got the most unlikely game for US Opens, and okay, he hasn't won it, but he's been runner-up 6 times. In fact, in the time that Geoff did win it, Phil managed to finish second by A, hitting it all over the place to begin with, and then B, obviously screwing up the last hole pretty badly. But Phil never played US Open courses like they were supposed to be played, up the middle on the green. He was all over the shop. So, and Geoff was never the most, I think he would admit himself, never the most reliable driver. So that made the US Open the least likely for him to win. But then when you think about it a bit more and use Phil as the example, it wasn't that surprising.
No. Well, frankly, temperament for a US Open, Geoff, you wouldn't have thought. Particularly younger, he was hot-headed, and the US Open drives players nuts.
Well, I think Geoff always gives a lot of credit to his caddy, Squirrel. And I think he's right to do that. Squirrel was a great calming influence to Geoff in times of high stress. And there was a great moment in that US Open. I think it was the 11th fairway on the third day where they stood there arguing basically back and forth, where Geoff wanted to go for the green with a wood and Squirrel just wouldn't let him. And Squirrel won the argument and was proved to be right in the end. So I think Squirrel deserves at least a piece of that US Open.
Takes courage as a caddy to say no to a player who's determined to do something, doesn't it? Indeed. That, of course, is just one small part of what's been a really interesting career and is in a really interesting phase now, Geoff, in the golf course design world. I haven't had a chance to listen to the whole interview yet. Did you talk much about that? I know that you know, Geoff, I don't want to give away any trade secrets, but you kind of ghostwrite his column for Golf Australia magazine. In truth, he could probably do it himself, should he want to. He's a pretty bright one.
He could absolutely do it himself, although he does make the point that he said that what takes me, say 3 hours would take him 3 days, just because he's not a journalist. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's got the wide vocabulary, and he could easily write the column himself if he had the time and the inclination. But he does make the point, of course. I think he's joking when he says that I write better as him than I do as myself. But there's probably some truth to that.
Indeed. How many awards has Geoff written on the back of your...
Well, he's won more than me, put it that way. Yeah, the multi-award winning Geoff Ogilvy, he describes himself as. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. Caddies all over the place. They can be tough interviews when you know someone as well as you know, Geoff. How did you find this one?
Well, yeah, you're right. I was a little bit, a little bit trepidation because we've talked so often about so many subjects. I was worried that we might almost dry up, but there was no danger of that. I mean, Geoff's the kind of guy that, almost every month when we sit down to talk about his column, we start off with absolutely no idea what we're going to do, and then within about 2 or 3 minutes, he's off and running. I mean, if you just give him a little bit of push in the right direction, and he just needs that to to go. And he's certainly, as I think most people will know by now, he's certainly one of the more interesting, if not the most interesting golf professionals to listen to.
Well, thoughtful, isn't he, about things beyond just his own game? And that's what makes golf professionals the most interesting. Well, it's a sharp mind. It's a sharp column every month. I am sure, and I'm keen to listen to what I'm sure is a fabulous interview. Been great of you to come along and give us a bit of an insight today, Huggy.
My pleasure.
Okay, welcome to the latest edition of the Thing About Golf podcast. Our guest this time around is somebody, I can't believe he hasn't done this already, but I'm assured that you haven't. Geoff Ogilvy, 2006 US Open champion. What was the thing about golf for you?
I don't know, because I don't ever remember not doing it. It's been said by a few people and a few things, I think, but I guess golf chose me rather than the other way around.
What do you mean exactly by that?
Well, Mum tells this story that she bought my sister, who was 16 months older than me, so we're really close. When she was 3 or 4, she bought her the little broom that you would follow Mum around the kitchen with.
Right.
I mean, this is probably not very PC anymore, but in the late 70s, early 80s, that was kind of what, I guess, one of the things you did. So the little daughter would follow Mum around the kitchen with the little broom, and I was really little, 2 or 3, and she didn't know what to buy me, so she's like, "I'll get Geoff one too." And apparently all I did was grab this little broom and hit balls with it.
Right.
I'd just walk around the house and just hit things with it.
Right.
So she's like, "Well, maybe we should have got little golf clubs instead." So
were they golfers at the time, your parents?
Dad was just getting into it.
Right. Yeah.
And the earliest, I don't remember that, but I remember chipping balls in the back garden with Dad. And we had those little wiffle balls that were little plastic things with the holes in them.
Holes in them, yeah.
So they'd only go like 20 yards or something. But that's enough. When you're at 4, that's golf, right? And we used to hit them, and he used to hit them up onto the roof, and they would bounce back down the roof. It was like a ball returner almost, these little plastic things. And I vivid memories of doing that, and I'd make little golf courses in the backyard with those things, and I just went from there, I guess. Got a set of clubs for Christmas. They were secondhand. I think I was 7, like my first set. Little cut down, secondhand, nothing really very fancy. But I thought they were the best things in the world. And then Dad would take me to...
What make were they? Can you remember?
There was a brand called Fox, Foxx.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
And it was 468 pitching wedge and a 2-wood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then he'd start booking us golf. We'd play Sandringham Golf Club, the Muni right next door to Royal Melbourne, sandwiched between Royal Melbourne and Victoria Golf Club.
Yeah.
And my memory is it was like every Sunday, but it couldn't have been. But it was very regular golf. He'd call up during the week, get his tea time on Sunday, and we'd go play.
Right, just the two of you?
With whoever, with the random.
Oh, right.
It was you always get put with 4, with 2 others.
Right.
And we always scored. He always made us do a scorecard. We always played by the rules. Like from day one, I had all my, we had all my first scorecards, and first score was 118. I remember that vividly, and it was obviously varied up and down, and then progressively it came down, and he kept the first card in the 90s, and then the first card in the 80s, and then the first card in the 70s. And,
I mean, I ask this question a lot in these podcasts, but I mean, when did it become clear that there was, apart from the initial obsession, there was some talent there?
I don't know. Not really, because it was all I ever did was play with Dad and probably 2 randoms at Sandy.
When did you start?
I don't know. I always felt like it was pretty easy, and I didn't understand why Dad would like complain about how hard it was.
Right.
I don't know. But when you're only hitting it 60 yards or something, it's pretty simple. He goes, "Oh, when you get older, it's not so easy, Geoff." And probably not until I started playing with peers that I realised I was probably finding it a bit easier than they were. I don't know. I loved it. I mean, started wanting to watch all the golf tournaments on TV, and we'd tape all the tournaments, and I'd watch them. You'd watch the Masters broadcast over and over and over again. Like from about 86 onwards, I remember having the tapes.
Well, you were a bit of a reader as well, though, weren't you? Which is unusual, I think, for kids. I mean, I didn't start reading golf books initially. I mean, it's only later on when you kind of got into it a bit more and was interested in certain aspects of it.
I think Mum and Dad got me Down the Fairway, Jones's first sort of autobiography. It takes him doesn't even get to the Grand Slam. Gets to about, He's about 24 or something at the end of that one.
It's his temperament years.
Yeah. And my copy, it's like, happy birthday, Geoff, I hope you enjoy this or something. And I think I was like 12 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I read that, and then I sort of looked for golf books for whatever. I mean, it wasn't like it was all golf and it was only golf. I was doing plenty of kids stuff, but I would read golf books, loved them.
Yeah, I remember getting the Mark McCormack annual for 1973, the year of golf, 1973. And the things I can still tell you about what happened in 1973, just because I read that book, over and over and over.
It's amazing what leaves an impression when you're a kid. Yeah, so I read the Jones book a lot, and Gary Player autobiography, and then I started looking for biographies and stuff because I thought I loved the story. Like what we're doing now. Like I loved the story of how Gary Player got to doing what he was doing, and how there was 2 or 3 Norman ones and the Seve one and the Hogan stuff. And I just got into I love the writing too. The even at a young age, there's something really appealing and simple about the language that Jones and Keel had used in those books. It's like, I wish people would write like that now.
It's hard to write that simply.
Yeah. And it was so easy to read. And described it with words that I hadn't heard before that they weren't teaching me at school. And it was, I don't know, it's just...
Who were your heroes? Were you the like everybody in Australia seems to be a Greg Norman fan at that point?
Yeah, it was Norman really, I think. But, I mean, I grew up probably 3 good shots from the fence at Royal Melbourne. Probably a par 5 and a par 3 distance, probably 600 or 700 yards from the 3rd hole on the East course, which at the time was 15 on the composite course. And there was a tournament in the 80s every year, it felt like, at Royal Melbourne. 84 Australian Open, 85 Australian Open, I think, 87 Australian Open, where there was a walk-off and the greens too fast.
When did Watson win?
Watson won in 84, and everyone came. Everybody came. So I saw the best in the world all the way through the 80s. And so, I'm born in 1977. I remember the Bicentennial Classic in 1988. Mum and Dad gave me the week off school. I was 11, and they gave me the whole week off school. And everyone was there. Nicholas was there, Watson, Norman, Fred Couples nearly lost to Roger Davis in a playoff. It was incredible. I spent the whole week just following golfers around.
So they must have recognised this incredible level of interest in somebody that age to give you a week off school.
I guess. I was already obsessed. Yeah. And my school was actually right next to the 17th tee on the East course, which is the 17th on the composite. And I would be watching Fred Couples go play down the 17th, and I'd hear the bell for recess and stuff. Yeah. It was fantastic. It's like, I'm winning this week. And they just dropped me off there, and I'd be there all day. 11. I can't even think of leaving my 11-year-old at a golf tournament all day by himself, but I did it all week,
So who did you gravitate towards then? Or what was energizing you the most, or what aspect of it? Was it just the glamour of it probably at that stage?
No, I don't know. I just loved it. That was part of it. I loved the range. I didn't really ever follow Norman because it was too hard to follow him. There was just too many people.
Well, you wouldn't be that big at that point.
But you could be sitting at the range at Royal Melbourne watching golfers hit. I loved watching them hit it. Just because I want to be able to hit it like that. And you could tell when Norman had arrived at the course somehow, just by the feeling. All of a sudden there's this buzz. It's a bit like Tiger these days. Like, you can just tell.
Seve had that as well.
Yeah, you can just tell. And then he would stride onto the range and he just looked like a movie star. I didn't follow him. I remember the 88, I followed Freddie for at least 3 rounds. There's something... Who doesn't like watching Fred Couples play golf? And even at 11, it just made sense.
Even now, I'd like, yeah.
Yeah, it just made sense. I remember following him a lot and being really disappointed when he lost the playoff. Even though Roger Davis won, he was an Australian. I didn't care. Freddie was my man that week. I don't know, but everyone came through. And I got to know all the people at Royal Melbourne. I ended up caddying at Royal Melbourne sort of soon after that, when I was sort of 12 and 13. And we used to get... access to the East course after 4:30. You'd go and caddy on a Saturday morning or something, but any day you could play after 4:30 on the East course, which was a really good deal.
It's quite enlightened, that.
Yeah. A really good deal. And also in the days, Australians had stopped taking caddies so much. They were like, I didn't get to go out much. I probably only went out 15 times in 2 years, like not very much. But I didn't do it to caddy. I did it so I could play golf. And this is before I wasn't a member anywhere yet, so that was my golf. So all summer, Mum would drop me up at the course at 4:29, and I'd walk to the first tee on the east course and play until dark. She'd leave me there with...
They never had to worry about where you were then?
No, she'd leave me there with 20 cents for a phone call. Like, call me, there was a public phone in the locker room. I could go use and call her and say, I'm done now. And she'd come get me.
That's brilliant.
And then I joined Cheltenham Golf Club, and I was about 13 or 14. And then that was it. Then I had a proper handicap, and there was other kids around and people to compete with, and I was off.
I've always been quite intrigued. I mean, I look at it from the outside, obviously. The pennant system in your country, I mean, it seems like a great breeding ground for people that are going to progress like you did.
Oh, it's incredible.
Great place to start.
I mean, pennant, they have it in New South Wales too, but in Victoria, especially metropolitan Melbourne, every private club, which is most of them, every membership club, I mean, they're all totally private, but every membership club had a pennant team. And it was divisions. Division 1, I think there's 6 divisions, and there's about 8 teams in each division. Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. And promotion relegation.
Yeah, all good. And all match play as well.
All match play. So it's 7v7 every Sunday morning for an 8-week season, and then a final. And it was it's a big pride of place for the clubs, especially up high, like the Division 1 teams, which was all the Sand Belt, which was Kingston Heath and Victoria and Metro. And it was fantastic. And you were playing against the best. And you start off at number 7, like number 5 in the minor pennant team, the junior pennant team, and you end up in the seniors. And by the time I was playing number 1, you're playing the best player, the best 6 or 7 players in the state. You're playing them every Sunday.
Yeah, but the real point is though that you're playing from the start. You're playing somebody or against people who are slightly better than you.
Yes,
as you move on up,
mm-hmm.
There's nothing better than that.
No, and you're in the team. And so you got the whole club behind, so there's a little bit more pressure. You got people watching a little bit. And when you're good as a kid, you end up playing the wily old veteran who's 36, who's been playing pennant for 20 years, and he knows all the tricks of match play. And there's absolutely no doubt. I ended up a pretty decent match player in the end because of playing against wily old guys like that who'd play all the games. And by the time I was 17 or 18, I knew all the tricks and all the games of match play because they'd done it to me all before.
Do you think that was a factor later on? I mean, your match play record, even at the level you reached, is extraordinary. I mean, you won twice the World Match Play and got the final another time, and President's Cup record singles is terrific as well. I mean, I always had a theory, and you've heard me say this before, but it's not the only reason, but your short putting was amazing. I mean, you just didn't miss short putts, and I think that's huge in match play. If you don't miss any short putts, you're never giving the other guy any encouragement, and he's always on the back foot, I think.
Yeah, short putting I was very good through that period for sure. But match play fascinated when I got here, because all the kids, we can all play match play in Australia. We all know what we're doing because we all play pennant and all that big, the Victorian Amateur, the Australian Amateur, they were all match play tournaments. And when I started playing these world match plays against these pros, mostly Americans, it was very obvious straight away that these guys did not know how to play match play at all, like at all. And it's not the same game at all, and it was quite fun. It's not gamesmanship, but it's just understanding match play and how to play it. It was quite fun actually to play against guys who really were just playing a stroke play game, sort of stroke play style golf in match play. It was great. Yeah, absolutely. And Jason was the same. Jason's a great match player. He would have played a lot of match play at home. Poulter's obviously great. I mean,
yeah. Well, we grew up
playing match
play
play,
pennant, but we have there's a hell of a lot of match play in Britain. Yeah,
and it's fascinating to me because golf in the US at a club level is all match play. But the ones who make it to pro don't have the skill set. They're better. They might be better players over 72 holes, but over 18 holes with all the little nuances of match play, they didn't get it. So I love that. That was my favourite tournament. I mean, I wish pro golf was match play every week, but
it really is once it gets towards the end. You know, it's the old line of stroke play is only interesting when it turns into match play.
Yeah, but the gimmies and there's so many different things in the rules of match play too that you can sort of use to fully within the etiquette and the spirit of the game. You can use to sort of get advantages just by rattling the other person and stuff. Yeah.
Well, you probably aren't old enough to remember. I can remember playing match play where you could leave the opponent's ball
next to the hole if he putted up,
Like stymies.
No, well, no stymies. No, I'm not quite that old. But you could leave if you playing you and you putted up to 3 inches away, I could use your ball to go in off.
Oh, they couldn't mark it unless you wanted them to.
No, I was in charge of what you did with your ball.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I don't remember that.
I
Been
can
fun.
remember doing that a couple of times.
That would have been fun. I mean, just the little things like you give them a 3-footer on the first, and then you don't give them an 18-incher on the second, and then you give them a 4-footer on the third, and then you don't give them the 12-incher on the. I mean, and then they're just completely imploding. They're like, "What's wrong with this person?" Like, I can't. And their heads off somewhere else, and then you just go beat them. I think that stuff's great fun. Yeah, pennant golf is great. It's one of the best things about growing up, especially in Melbourne. They have it in Sydney too, but I think it's take it a bit more seriously in Melbourne. And it bonds you to your club too, and you get to meet all the members. So you're a junior, and junior golf club golfers, especially in those days, were sort of wasn't even be seen and not heard. It was like don't be seen and don't be heard. You know, they weren't really meant to be in the bar or the clubhouse or any of that.
But you're right. There's nothing like team golf for winning. When you win as a team, I mean, that's a great feeling, and it's different from winning by yourself, I think.
So much better, because you can lose your match that day and win, and you're happy. You know, you can win your match that day, and the team loses, and you're not happy, and you're carrying the weight of a club. You know, and you'd meet all the club guys. They'd all come out, and you'd have caddies who are members, and you end up meeting the whole club. And the pennant players, at least in that day, I don't think it's quite the same now. You were kind of like really respected members of the club, you know, because you were representing them every Sunday, and you beat Metro, well done last week, you know, good stuff, Geoff.
There'd be a few, people working in offices that, there'd be a bit of banter going back and forth.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm intrigued by, I don't think you've talked a bit about over the years with me your amateur days. Talk a bit about that. I mean, you did a fair bit of travel, to Britain, certainly, a couple of times as an amateur. I mean, how important was that, and how useful did that turn out to be later on?
Really big, I think. Yeah, I mean, but I got through year 12, Mum and Dad. So I finished high school. Their rule was, we know you're probably, by this point, by the middle of high school, they sort of knew I wasn't going to have an academic sort of career. It was going to be golf.
What subjects did you hate and like? Just
all
in passing?
Just going in general. Yeah. I mean, I loved PE. I loved the sport. And there was, I had a good time at school, but I found it easy to pass, but I never cared about grades. I just wanted to pass. So I found it relatively easy through school. By the time I sort of got towards the end of it, I realised that if I just communicated with the teachers and told them, and did all my work, then they wouldn't care if I didn't turn up in the afternoon and I was playing golf or something. So once I finished high school, it sort of exploded, and I kind of became a professional amateur, if you like. We had a really good setup with the Victorian Institute of Sport. So we had to sort of structure. It wasn't just aimlessly sort of wandering around like some golfers seem to when they're young. Like, we had structure. We had sort of Tuesday and Thursday practices and gym sessions, and we had access to what everyone's doing now. Like, there were sort of 4 leaders, I think, at that point. We had the psychology and the nutrition, and
it's some good coaching as well, did you?
Some really good coaching, access to all the good stuff, and I just played every event I could. And at the time, it's way less now, and it's one of my bugbears about what's going on in Australia sometimes. But I played a 36-hole tournament almost every weekend of the year. Like, there's pennant season, which is about 8 weeks long, and the rest of the time I was playing a golf tournament. And then once I think when I was 19, I went to the UK for the first time. The VIS could scratch up a little bit of funding for 2 or 3 of us to head over and play the summer in the UK, and then hopefully get to the US and play the US Am or Western Am, a couple of the big ones over here. But this was pre-internet, so we had to write away to the St Andrews Links Trust for the St Andrews Links entry form. We had to write away to the R&A to get the Open entry form, and the English Golf Union to get the Brabazon Trophy entry form. We had to get all the entry forms mailed, which would take 2 months from start to getting the entry form. And then we'd have to get it signed. We'd have to get it signed by Colin Phillips, who was the chairman of the boss of the AGU at the time, which is now Golf Australia, and then send it all back like snail mail. So we'd be starting this in like January, February, to head off sort of mid-May, and we'd land at Heathrow, and we'd have the Brabazon Trophy at Royal St George's, and none of us were old enough to rent a car. We really didn't. We had enough money to get over there in a little bit, but it's not that we were going to be sharing rooms and doing it
Who are
cheap.
you travelling with at this point?
This was Steve Allen and Jamie McCallum my first year. So you wouldn't know Jamie McCallum, but he was a great player, and Stevie Allen's had a pretty nice career, and he's still playing golf. So we'd catch a train to Canterbury or something, and then we'd sort of somehow find a way to find a place that would rent a car to young kids, and it was some dodgy brothers rental car place around the side of Canterbury, and then we'd rented some place in a little town called Ash.
Yeah, I've stayed there.
Yeah. And then off, and we'd play that tournament, and then we'd have sort of 10 days till the St Andrews Links Trophy, and then so we'd sort of somehow find our way up by train or something, like we'd find our way to St Andrews in Edinburgh, and Stevie had some family in Edinburgh. So
Scotland, Stevie Allen.
Yeah. On the Ferry Road, his uncle lived. And we'd stay there for a couple of days, and we'd find a field to hit balls in or something, and get to the old course.
Was the golf as foreign to you guys as it would be to, say, people from America? Because I think there's a fair amount of similarity in the stuff that you played growing up.
Yeah, there is similarity, but I think it's all attitude. I think I wanted to like it before I got there. And maybe it's because I'd read all these books and I'd watched the Open on TV and just soaked in everything golf. And if you soak in everything golf, it doesn't take you very long to realise that Scotland's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. It's like if you get into wine, you eventually you're going to realise that it's all about France, and it's just what it's all about.
Yeah.
I wanted to like it a lot, so that's not really a fair measure. Whereas I think a lot of Americans don't want to like it at first, and then eventually everybody likes it.
Yeah.
Like it hits you
Tom
over
Watson's a classic example of that. He didn't get it at all to begin with,
and eventually it was his favourite golf. You know, and Jones tore up his scorecard at the old course the first time. And I don't know, and I don't think every Australian was like that, but I wanted to enjoy it, and it's the golf we grow up with is sort of a hybrid between Seaside Links and Augusta, say.
Yeah.
Like somewhere between soft and green and hard and brown. That's Melbourne.
Yeah.
So I think you can go either way from Melbourne. It's such a great place to grow up from the Sandbelt.
Yeah.
You drift one way for the soft American golf, or you drift just the other way. You're sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
But I loved every minute of it. I mean, so we were over there for 2.5 months on a shoestring budget, kids traveling around with a carry bag and one little suitcase.
Yeah.
Trying to find some place that would rent us like a little Chinky Cuento thing that was really not fit for one person, let alone 3 people with 3 golf bags. I mean, I can pack a golf car. I can pack a car. Like it's amazing how much you can get in a car.
Yeah, yeah. Laundry's always the big thing.
Laundry, but when you're that age, you just turn them inside out and get going, right?
True.
It was fantastic for golf too. That was, I mean, all the coaching and all the practice and all the everything I did, 100%. That was the biggest reason, because I did that 3 years in a row. So I did the UK summer. We'd play 5 or 6. Popped onto the continent a couple of times when we had a couple of weeks. Played in Germany and then get to America. And I'd get back. I'd leave in May and I'd get home in September. And I'd played like a pro, kind of, you know. And these fields were Immelman, Garcia, Rose, and a bunch of other guys, but they're the 3 names that stick out the most. Yeah. So we were playing against this. So we've been peers since we were kids. That was the best education by miles. Better than any lesson, better than any practice or any little tip or anything. Just travel, play, learn a course in a day, play, travel, learn a course in a day, play. You don't have your own setup. You're hitting balls we'd hit balls in fields. Yeah. You know, you'd see some open patch in Scotland. Oh, we hit a few balls, you know.
So you had some success as well, didn't you? I mean,
I had a couple of really good runs. I mean, I finished second at the Brabazon, which was the biggest stroke play tournament in England, maybe?
No, the Lytham Trophy was the British stroke play.
Yeah.
The Brabazon was the English stroke play championship, basically.
Yeah. We never got there early enough for the Lytham Trophy. That was like a week or 2 before we got there. I think I finished second or third at St Andrews a couple of times. Justin Rose won one of those. The year he finished 4th at the Open or whatever it was, he won I played with him on the last 2 rounds at St Andrews a month before, you know. Yeah. I never won anything in the UK, but I felt I was in the mix a lot. The last couple of years I was there, I'd kind of sussed it out and made the quarters, I think, at the amateur.
Was that, how disappointing was that when you look back on it?
Very, because
I mean, I can relate.
Yeah. Only great players losing the quarterfinals.
Indeed, you, me and Jack.
Yeah. I was playing great. I qualified second or third at Gullen 1 and Muirfield. And Sergio had qualified 2 and I'd been 3 or something. So we were destined to meet each other in the final and we kind of knew it. And I lost in the quarters to this kid from Wales. It was just, I was playing great. It was just one of those days. Sometimes it just, he makes a few putts early and I hit a couple of bad shots and before you know it, you're 4 down with 6 to play. It's like, how'd that happen? I'm supposed to win this week. Yeah. So it didn't work out. It was disappointing, but the disappointment, I don't know. Sometimes when you're a kid, I think the disappointment goes away a lot quicker, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's all part of development. I mean, you're always on to the next thing.
Because all you see is future at that point.
Yeah.
I feel like the older you get, and so when you get out on tour and stuff, I think bad weekends or a bad finish or a near miss is harder to deal with than when I was a kid, you know.
Yeah. I
probably didn't appreciate. I mean, I knew the amateur was a massive deal, but
yeah, well,
it's
you
well,
could have been playing here where we're sitting right now. You could have been playing in the Masters.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So Sergio won that one. Mm. Yeah, and then I'd come here. I never really could come to the US to play sort of Porter Cup, Western Am, US Am, and I never really had any real success over here because it was usually at the end of the trip and we were pretty tired. And
I want you to tell the story of the time that you were in the UK when you weren't supposed to be in the UK.
Yeah. Well,
which is highly amusing to me. It's typical amateur golf administration at its worst.
So there was this kind of rule, I think it was an RA rule, about receiving funding as an amateur for travel. Mm-hmm. And there was some sort of thing that you could only play 20 tournament days having been funded overseas or something. Some weird sort of random rule. And the AGU decided that, no, Geoff, you're getting too much help. And it really was just aeroplane flight to get there, like $2,000 or $3,000 or something, and that was about it. It wasn't like we were getting like it is now, where they've all got logos on their shirts and stuff. Yeah. And so I was supposed to I could go over there and play off the VIS sort of funding money, and I could play 3 tournaments. And if I wanted to play any more, so that got me like Brabazon and St Andrews, the amateur. And if I wanted to play any more, which I had 2 or 3 more planned, I had to fly home, turn around, and then fly back on my own dime. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I was in breach of amateur status or something. So I was with Brad Lamb and Cam Percy, I think, that year maybe. Cam Percy, who's still playing on the PGA Tour. And we told them I went back. And I just didn't play the tournament in Wales. I just hid out in the room all week. And I actually watched the US Open. It was the Lee Jansen at Olympic US Open.
Yeah, that would be what, 98?
97 or 8, yeah. 98.
98, yeah.
So I just hid in my room all week and they played the tournament and we told them that I went back.
Yeah.
And then we went to the next tournament, which was like east of Scotland or something, and then said, I went back. Yeah, now I'm on my own dime. And then for the next month, apparently they were having meetings trying to work out how to relinquish my amateur status, which was kind of annoying because I was about to turn pro anyway. I qualified for the US Amateur at Oak Hill, the one that Hank Keeney won. Right. And during the week, they were trying to get rid of my amateur status. So I heard. This is all hearsay. I wasn't actually there, and I never really. This was pre-internet and email and stuff, so it wasn't.
At that stage, you wouldn't care that much anyway.
I didn't care. That was my last amateur tournament, and unfortunately, I'd been carrying a bag for 8 weeks. You're carrying your own bag every week in these things, and umbrellas and heavy. And I had the only time in my life really I had a bad back was in that Oak Hill USAM in whenever this was 98, and so it ended up being a moot point. But it's just interesting that your own golf association, you're over there representing the US Amateur, probably a realistic chance to win it. One of 20 kids out of the 200 that are probably a chance to win it. Yeah. And they were trying to make it harder for me, which was
that the same trip where you got some, new insight into the Scottish character, where I think you were in a pub in Stirling watching England play Argentina in a World Cup match, and
that was 98. It must have been 98.
And Argentina scored and the place went wild.
Well, we were in Stirling, staying at Ramsey McMaster's mum's house. Right. We were between tournaments because these amateur, it's not like pro golf. It's not like Thursday to Sunday, Thursday to Sunday. But sometimes there was 2 weeks between tournaments, and we'd always find somewhere to stay. Yeah. I mean, everyone in Australia's got some sort of connection to someone in Scotland.
Yeah.
And so we were staying with Ramsey's relatives, and we just went down and watched Argentina, England in Scotland. And you just assume that, I know they don't really like each other, but like you want England to win if you're Scotland over Argentina. And when Beckham got red carded, he tripped Ortega over and he got red carded. The place just went nuts. And I'm like, I thought initially they're going nuts because he got red carded, like in a negative way. But no, they were pumped and happy. And then Argentina
I shouldn't
wins.
be proud of this, but I am.
They're out on the streets having parties just because they don't care if Scotland wins or loses. No. It's irrelevant. They just want England to lose.
Well, it's the old line that we support two teams, Scotland and whoever's playing England.
Yeah. And I found that really kind of cool. So I'd never really identified. Dad was born in England, but with Scottish hair. I mean, Ogilvy's very Scottish.
Where I live now, Kirriemuir and Angus, there's Ogilvy's. I've sent you the signs with the names on them. Ogilvy's are everywhere.
Yeah, it's one of the oldest names in Scotland. It's been around for a while. Absolutely. One of the old clans. Yeah, we've got our tartan and our dress tartan and our war tartan and all that stuff. Yeah. And Dad had some of that growing up, so he identified, to use the modern vernacular. He would have thought of himself as Scottish, even though
he did a bit.
He grew up in Cambridgeshire, which is very English, but his father, I think, was born in Scotland, and then it was Ogilvy, Scotland. Yeah, and we're very lily white.
Yeah. He was always pleased to see me, your dad.
Yeah, so I definitely, at that moment, the Argentina-England game, I'm like, I'm going to choose the Scotland side of this argument. I like this. This is kind of cool. I mean, it was bizarre that this thousands of years old rivalry is still that strong.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. It's not. I mean, I shouldn't be proud of it, but it's in me. You just can't deny it.
It's a.
I mean, I always say, we talk about Scottish independence. I always say that the sooner we give England independence, the better.
I mean, it's friendly mostly, but when you're in the pub, it isn't. It's fantastic. Yeah, it's fun.
So did all of that make your decision on where to play when you did turn pro easier? You went to Europe first.
I don't know about easier. It certainly made it, when I got to Europe, easier because I understood where I was going. But it was just what we did at the time. Yeah, America was just.
It was the route for most Aussies, wasn't it? Yeah.
America was a bridge too far. It was the US is a very foreign country. Well, it's way less foreign now because, again, with the globalization and the internet, we all know everything. But getting to America through Britain and Europe made more sense, because the cultures are more similar, and every golfer before us, everyone outside of Steve Elkington, probably, who came to college.
Bruce Devlin.
Early.
Bruce Compton.
Went through Europe. Norman. Yeah. I mean, everyone, there was 15, 20 Australian players playing in Europe when I was turning pro, like Roger Davis and Peter O'Malley and Peter Senior and Peter Lonard and Steve Allen, who I'd been travelling with a couple of years before. He'd been there for 2 years. So it was that was the only thing I was ever going to do. So after the USAM in 98, I entered pre-Q1. So I went straight from Rochester, New York to England, entered pre-Q1, which was the first stage of the European Tour School that I played at Chart Hills in East Sussex, I guess, is it? Yeah, and it was 120 for 10. So it was a tough thing. But if you missed it, you could go to pre-Q2 for another 120. And so you got two cracks at a really hard qualifier. It was a bit like the Open qualifier. It was the same sort of numbers, same sort of field, kind of. Oh, not quite this quality of field, but it was a tough one. And luckily I got through, played really well. I don't know where I finished, but I finished in the top 10. And so then I could go to San Roque and went to Spain. So,
you know the feeling when your mate's golf ball flies past yours? Or when you're on the green in regulation, but he holes it from the bunker. At Drummond Golf, we get it. That's why we have our lowest price guarantee. As Australia's biggest, you can count on our massive buying power for the lowest prices in golf. But if you do happen to find a lower advertised price, we'll beat it. The Drummond Golf lowest price guarantee. Unbeatable. Conditions apply.
Who were the great players that you played with then? Did you play with the Seves and Faldos and Woosies?
In Europe, I played with... Monty was the most impressive. I played with him in Scandinavian Masters. I shot like 62, I think, on Friday, or 63 or something, and got in the last group because he was always in the last group. Yeah. Like, it's just always. On Saturday, I played with him in the last group at Malmo at Barzabak.
Yep.
And he ended up winning the tournament. I finished second or third. He was the most impressive. Darren. I mean, I played with Tiger in Europe in Hamburg. I played with
Terrible course. Hamburg.
Good Carden, yeah. Great field though. I mean, I played with Darren Clark and Tiger in the last round on Sunday, and Westwood ended up shooting 64 on Sunday and winning, which he was prone to do quite often too.
There for that.
So I played with all of them. Monty was the best player I played with, I think, at that time, but Seve was the best. I played with Seve at the Volvo Masters at Sotogrande, and that must have been 2000.
He was getting towards the end then, wasn't he?
Yeah, thinking back, it's like amazing he was in the Volvo Masters at that point, but he must have had a couple of good weeks that week because it was, top 60 or something made Volvo Masters?
Yeah.
And that was the best because I'd watched... He played a lot my 2 years, and he was always in the Players' Lounge, and he was always on the chipping green and always on the range. And it didn't matter. You just couldn't not watch him. You didn't matter how into your practice you were. If Seve turned up, you were not practicing really anymore. You were going through the motions and watching.
Certainly the chipping green. My goodness.
Incredible. And then when Jose would come too, I love the ball on the chipping green. He was almost more impressive, but you'd watch them. Seve was my favourite draw. I used to hit balls for Sandy Lyle a lot. Sandy Lyle, I got in this sort of... I was pretty dedicated at this point, and I was hitting a lot of balls. And Sandy would be just about from me. He used to hit balls with a rain jacket, not zipped up.
I know.
I don't know how you play golf like that. And I got quite friendly with Sandy there for a couple of years because he respected. There's a lot of that old school pro who respects the guy. I mean, it still happens now, but they respect the guy who's always on the range, like doing the hard yards.
They'll give you some time. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd go tuck up in the corner with Sandy, and he'd be trying to give you lessons, and you'd be giving him lessons hitting balls in the afternoon in Holland or something. It was. Great time. European tour was great fun.
So why was America always the aim for you then? I mean, you didn't hang around in Europe that long.
I guess I assumed that I'd like to play there one day, to play in the US one day, but I finished top 3 on the Australian Order of Merit. Must have been the 99-2000 sort of season. And at the time, the first 3 who wanted to go got exempt to the final stage of the USQ school from our Order of Merit, which was a fantastic exemption. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't easy to finish top 3 on the Order of Merit at that point because there was a lot of good tournaments and you'd have some good players. But I had a couple of good weeks and I'd finished second, I think, at the Johnny Walker, which was the biggest money event, which really helped. And I had a pretty good season. So I had the opportunity to go to the final Q school at... in Palm Springs, and I'm like, well, you have to do that. I've got the chance. It's not like I'd really...
So it just came along.
It just came along. Yeah. It was an opportunity. It's like, oh, I'll go and play that.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate in that I didn't care if I made it or missed. Not care is the wrong word.
Yeah. So it's maybe the best way to be, of course.
Yeah. Care isn't the right word. I didn't need it. This would be nice, but this was when Europe had already starting... They'd started the 2001 season straight after the Volvo Masters. They'd started doing sort of the wraparound thing. And I'd played the Johnny Walker again in Thailand and finished second to Tiger and made... So that was a European Tour event. And so I'd made... For the 2001 season in Europe, I'd already kept my card before I went to the Q school for the 2001 season in the US. Yeah. So I wasn't only going there knowing I was exempt in Europe the next year, and I was exempt in Europe for 2 years effectively. So I went there knowing it doesn't matter if I miss because I've got 2 years in Europe. Like I wanted to make it, but I didn't really mind if I didn't because I'll just go play Europe. I was having a good time. The opportunity presented it, and I was just happened to be. This was 2 weeks after the Johnny Walker. I was in a sweet spot of form. I was playing really well, and you've just had a whole weekend playing with Tiger and. Sort of a big time event, and now you get to a Q school and you just feel like you're in a better place than these kids who haven't played a tournament for 12 months, and it's an unfair sort of situation. I just took advantage of it and I played really well. Steve Allen actually won that Q school.
Did he? Well, here's a hypothetical for you. I mean, had you not made it through that, would you have been as good as quick staying in Europe?
I think I was just starting to play really well. It all happened. I was so lucky. It happened all at the right time. I was in great form. This couple of years of hitting balls on the range with people like Sandy and it was fine. It was paying dividends.
Well, that sounds like that was exactly the right thing to do at that point. But another 2 years of it would have had the same amount of benefit, maybe.
Maybe. It's all. There's a lot of timing in golf.
Yeah.
Because form comes and goes not through your own choice. You know, you're always on this up and down, up and down, up and down, and you just want the ups to be when the important stuff is. And I know it's important to win majors and big tournaments, but the most important parts of your life is you want to be in form when you go to Q schools, because they're really
it's another year,
life-changing sort of weeks. I don't know. I was starting to get comfortable in Europe. I loved Europe. In some ways, I would have been better, I think, if I'd played a few more years in Europe, because you learn more about being a professional golfer in Europe, because you got different. This is pre-Euro too, so it's different currencies, different cultures, an unbelievable assortment of different sorts of golf courses, like variety. Whereas the US is a very same. We're spoilt because it's the same rakes and the same sand and the same grass and the same thing every week, but you're also getting hurt by that because you're not learning to adapt. So I think I would have been maybe a bit more rounded. I mean, I'd been playing competitive stroke play golf tournaments since I was 14 by this point. So I had a lot of rounds under my belt. So I was a bit seasoned anyway, but a couple more years in Europe wouldn't have hurt. No. But this sort of window of opportunity, the access, I might not have had as easy a time getting on the tour in the US if it hadn't all just lined up like this. Yeah. And I was still playing well, and I went to Tucson, was the first tournament. I finished third. And a few weeks later at the Honda, I finished second. And like within a 3-month period, I'd gone from European tour quite happy to kept my card in the US and like feeling really comfortable. And that was a really important 3 months, I guess. Yeah, from that Johnny Walker 2 weeks before the Q School, or from the 2 weeks before the Q School to the Honda Classic, it was like it all changed a lot. And all of a sudden, you start making real money, and it's like, oh, I actually like them. This is actually pretty good.
Yeah. I can imagine. Yeah, just to change tack a little bit, you're well known for your interest in course architecture. Where did that start, and how did it developed over the years? Was it seeing bad courses help even more than seeing good ones sometimes?
Well, I think, I just frothed on everything golf. Like it didn't matter. Like I'd read all these books, and you read Jones about tearing up his scorecard at the old course and all these things. And I'd been to the old course a bit. And so I just think I just loved everything about the sport, and that was just one of the things. But growing up next door to Royal Melbourne and Victoria, I just thought that was normal. Like,
yeah, I was going to say, you wouldn't appreciate it to start.
No, not at all. I mean, everyone says this is one of the best courses in the world, and we're so lucky and we're so spoiled. But when you're this little country down there in Australia, you really don't. You see all these green places in the US, and you think, wow, it can't be one of the best courses in the world. They're just kind of like being nice to us, you know. But it was true. Everywhere I went, the courses were worse, and like miles worse.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah,
and especially when you start playing pro golf. I mean, amateur golf, at least the amateur stuff in the UK, you're playing the Open Rotor, and the US, we play the US Am at Oak Hill, and so I mean, we're playing great courses, and then you turn pro, and you're not going to those anymore. And it was just, I don't know, not disappointment, but it was. Everywhere I went wasn't as good as the place that I was playing at 4:30 every afternoon when I was a kid. It's just not even close.
Did that make it easier for you or harder, though? I mean, mentally, you could get kind of pissed off with it, or was it easier because the courses were not as difficult?
I don't know about as difficult. It was just there was so much less to the challenge, so it made it difficult because I'd be complaining that why is the bunker there and this hole's ridiculous.
Listening to Mike Clayton.
Why are we playing here? It just gradually, the architecture thing, and it gradually dawned on me that the enjoyment of my day and golf was incredibly influenced by where I was doing it and the course I was doing it on.
See, that can hurt you a little bit, I think, if you let it fester too much.
If shooting low scores is the requirement for your job, because you need to be engaged.
You should complain about it in the bar afterwards.
Yeah. I don't think it hurt me that much. I mean, it probably got me whining on the golf course a few times because you do see some crazy stuff in tour golf. You see some crazy holes and some weird stuff. I remember seeing the ball bounce out of that water hazard at Cron in Switzerland because it's like a little kiddie swimming pool. It's really shallow with a concrete bottom, and someone would fly it in the water and it would bounce out because it would hit the concrete under the bottom. Stuff like that. It's just like and I've come from Royal Melbourne. It's like incredible. I don't know. And then hanging out with Clates. When Clates turned up to Victoria Golf Club, this is just kind of as I was turning pro, he turned up and they got the deal to sort of do a bit of a master plan and do a little bit of work. They got the old pictures from Vic and sort of restored a couple of bunkers. And he's never backward in coming forward about sort of verbalising what he thinks of a golf course and how it should be and if it's wrong. And I didn't understand any of it at the start, but he sort of piqued my interest and he explained a little bit. And so then he says, oh, I'll read this book. And so I read The Spirit of St Andrews and Mackenzie. And then I'm like, this is really cool. And then you look at the old course a little bit differently. I mean, I'd already looked, as I said, I wanted to love that stuff before I got there. So I was already playing the old course the first time, looking at it from why is this so revered? So I was already looking to see why. So I was looking for it as opposed to going, I want to enjoy this golf course. I was looking to why is this so special and how do the bunkers have such a magnetic quality and why do I just keep shooting 74? Why can't I shoot 65? And you start trying to shoot 65 and then you shoot 80 and like it just started making gradually the picture became, it was like out of focus and gradually the picture just became
I mean, I think
clear.
One of the greatest things about links golf is that you can hit a shot and you watch it bounce, and you know that 8 seconds from now it's going to be in that bunker over there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's wonderful, I think.
And you know it at contact.
Yeah.
It might take 14 seconds for the ball to get in the bunker, but as soon as you make contact, you're like, oh no, that's in the bunker.
Yeah,
you just know. And the bunker's as big as a table. That's it.
Yeah.
It really is. It's like, it's out of focus and it just gets clearer and clearer and clearer. And once it clicks, golf course architect, like basic how it should be. I mean, you can argue about aesthetics and how it's supposed to look, but where things should be and how golf works best, it becomes really obvious once you start looking.
Yeah.
The best golf courses all do the same principles. They just do. And the bad ones all get it wrong. You know, they might have perfect grass and it might look immaculate from the clubhouse and you look out over there, but the course just leaves you wanting. You know, good shots get penalised, bad shots get rewarded. And just once it becomes clear, all you want to do is help people see that because golf would be a better game if every course made you play like the old course or Royal Melbourne or Augusta or Shinnecock there's hundreds of incredibly great courses, but there's so many that are so far off the mark that it just gets frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to name names a little bit? I mean, what's the
good ones, bad ones?
Yeah.
Well, I mentioned one in Switzerland that's not that great.
No, that's true.
That's not trying to be great, though.
But the view's fantastic.
Maybe the best venue for golf anywhere in the world. No, I'm not going to pick on any bad ones, but I mean, it's just, as I said, they generally, they dumb the test down so there's less depth to it. It's more just hit it long and straight, hit it on the green and make a putt. Yeah. As opposed to, well, if you want to hit this fairway, it really probably should be drifting left to right to keep it in the right place. And then your second shot really should be drawing to keep it on. To be able to get it close to that pin, you really have to be able to hit a fade off the tee and a draw in the second shot. And if it goes a bit high, it's not going to bounce right. I mean, it just adds more depth. It's like playing snooker on a full-size table. All of a sudden, the margins are finer and the skill level just is so much higher.
Yeah.
And I sort of thought of myself as someone who wanted to be that sort of golfer who could do it all. So I liked the courses that made me do that. And when I could do that, let me stand out. Now, you just notice, especially when you play competitive golf on a course, irrelevant of the score to par, the best players, the leaderboard and the finishing results would always look the best on the best courses. You play average courses and anyone in the field seems to be able to pop up and it's a bit more random.
Yeah.
But you go to the old course, it's only the good players at the end. It just is.
That's true.
And the Masters does it the best. I mean, because you've got side slopes and down slope. You've got to hit draws when the ball's below your feet. You've got to hit fades when the ball's above your feet. You really got to be in the right place. You've got to miss things and chipping around the green. You've got to hit some that don't have any spin. You've got to hit some that have a lot of spin. And these are things that are really high-level stuff that makes golf so good. The best courses do that.
Well, I mean,
and I just think golf is better when it makes you want to be a better golfer.
I mean, one of the greatest things, I mean, I'll take this to my grave, it was watching Tiger at the last President's Cup at Royal Melbourne. I mean, he was miles better than everybody else on that golf course.
It was incredible, wasn't it? It was a masterclass, and you could see how engaged he was. I mean, this made the best golfer of the last 30 years, maybe the best golfer ever, when he was playing his best. He was so into it. so into working it out and say he'll hit it to 25 feet over there on the one hole because that's the right shot.
Yeah.
And then the next hole he can hit it close so no one else does because he drives it in the right place and just put on a clinic.
Oh,
and who doesn't want to watch that?
Well, I
You
can
know,
keep
the
my eyes
best
on-
of all time
Yeah.
put on a clinic around a course that you kind of need to be the best of all time to be able. Only Tiger could put on a clinic. No one else could.
No, I mean, he was light years better than everybody else on that course.
It was fantastic, yeah. And to see the best get engaged like that, that's what it does. It just elevates, it just levels everything up. It just elevates the whole thing.
Yeah. Inevitably, we have to talk about winged foot. How often does that come up in conversation with you?
Well, when I'm talking to people like you, it comes up all the time.
Yeah.
It comes up a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fun story to tell. I mean, you do speak at the odd dinner and corporate event, and that's what people want to
I mean,
hear about.
it's an incredible finish.
Yeah, it was an amazing sort of sequence of events. I mean, I'd been playing really well. I won the match play earlier in the year. I was sort of establishing myself in the sort of top 10, 15 in the world. I was sort of one of the guys I thought I had a chance every week.
Yeah.
Had played the last couple of majors pretty well. I think I finished top 5 or 6 at the old course and at Ballesteros, sort of the Open and the PGA in 05. So I was just starting to sort of think, I can sort of get up to the pointy end of these majors a little bit. Finished like 15th or 16th at the Masters that year. So I was feeling it in the majors, starting to get there thinking, well, I'm one of these people that if it all, the stars all line up. But I didn't really go there thinking.
Yeah. But is there a difference between the majors and everything
Oh,
else?
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, define it then.
You have to be, I don't know. I feel like you have to be built a certain way or have, one, it's a tougher test. Like I was saying before, there's more depth to the test and you've got to have more than just hit it straight and hold a lot of putts. You've got to, it's not just hitting it in the right place, it's hitting it the right way in the right place, generally, a little bit more because you're going to these great courses. But the mental thing, I mean, Nicholas said it the best. I mean, it's a little different now. There seems to be more and more sort of belief seems to have been is more understood now, like that it's more important. But it always felt like in the majors, they were the easier ones to do well in because most of the field, they're trying too hard. They're uncomfortable in that situation. And there's about 5 guys, if I get in front of those 5, if I beat those 5, I'm winning. It just felt like that. So there is a difference. Harder to win, probably. Well, I don't know.
Well,
Different,
that's
different.
a good debate, actually. Yeah.
Different.
A lot of guys rule themselves out pretty much straight from the word
Straight
go.
at the start, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not easier to win is the wrong way to say it, but you have to be built the right way. And I don't know if you can do anything about that or you're just built that way. I don't know.
Did you think of yourself differently after you won it than you did before?
No.
Yeah.
Other people did.
Mm.
I was a little surprised. Not surprised because of the way it happened. I played really well during the week. Was sort of in there or thereabouts all week, and then everything sort of worked out for me. I was playing really well on Sunday. I think I was in front. I was the one in front after about 6 holes, and then sort of was letting it sort of drift away, and then parred the last 4 holes, and everybody else sort of fell in a mess. Which is parring the last 4 holes at Winged Foot's probably like playing a normal course in 2 under on the last 4 holes.
Yeah.
So I finished off really well and made a great up and down the last, and Phil and Monty sort of made a mess of the last hole.
They weren't the only two, though.
No, everybody did.
Yeah.
There was no one in the last 16 or 20 players who...
Get Harrington and Furyk and, there was a few in with a chance,
Yeah, so it worked out really well. Most of the week, I'm like, this is great. I'm in the mix. I'm in the last few groups in a major. And the US Open, for whatever reason, feels like the biggest one because it's so appropriate for America. It's just big and it's loud and it's...
But it's not the one that I would have picked you to win.
No, not at the time. It would have been the last one I would have picked because I wasn't the straightest hitter probably at the
That's what
time.
I mean, yeah.
But in hindsight, that was still in the really true, traditional, narrow US Open setups.
Yeah. So everybody was missing fairways.
Everybody misses
look
fairways.
Look at the way Phil played. I mean, he was all over the shop.
Everybody misses fairways. So, and my short game was outrageous at the time. And like you said, my putting was pretty good. So I just loved not the bigger the moment, but the more the pressure, the more important it was, it seemed to get me out of my head and more where I should always be. Like my problem was Thursday, Friday at a smaller tournament. Like,
Yeah,
because I wasn't
getting up for it.
into it enough. That's why the match play was great, because you're into it on the first hole. It's like, well, he hits it to 4 feet in the first hole. Well, you better hit it close.
Yeah.
Like, you got to make birdie. You know you have to make birdie before you hit your second shot. Whereas on Thursday at a normal tournament, like, you're just hoping to play well.
In the midst of all the the last hour and a half of whatever at Winged Foot, do you have time to sort of take a breath and have a look around and think, man, how good is this? Or is it just you're so into?
Yeah, at the time, I mean, that was my happiest place, was the big moment. Not the big moment, the big atmosphere and the big situation. I loved it. I mean, nervous before. I was never very good. I don't think anybody's very good at the morning and the like that 3 o'clock tea time, and you end up waking up. You want to sleep till 10, but you wake up at 6. And that's an uncomfortable. But I think everybody's pretty uncomfortable in that session. But once I got on the golf course, I was always happy. And the closer I got to the end, I just loved the challenge of the pressure and the spot. I like competing. I guess it's the competition more than the golf at that point. I don't know. I just enjoyed that, and I've just never really liked getting beaten by somebody. So it's less about the US Open. I'm better than you today.
Yeah,
it's not about better overall. It's just like, I just want to beat you today, because it's like you're running a race against your friend or something when you're a kid.
Yeah,
I'll beat you to the corner. You're just not going to let him win. Like, it doesn't matter, and it's determination rather than who runs the fastest. That's almost.
Right. Yeah,
and that situation seemed to get that out of me better.
When you hold the putt on 18, did you think that's a playoff at best?
Playoff at best. When I was over the putt, when I was sort of circling the putt and reading it and stuff, I'm thinking, well, all the things that go through your head. This is the 18-hole US Open playoff was still in, so I'm now going to have to change it. And when you used to register for the US Open, you'd get a Monday ticket, and you always thought it was weird.
Yeah,
you'd get Thursday,
right.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and there was a Monday just in case there was a playoff. And so this all sort of flashed through my head. Oh, playoff. This could be a playoff. Everyone's bogeying the last. Like, I'm a chance, because I make this and Phil's got to par the last to win. And when I walked off thinking it's a coin toss whether I lose by a shot or I'm in a playoff. It never entered my head that I was going to win that day.
Yeah.
Or walking off 18. Earlier in the day, I maybe thought I was going to win.
Yeah.
But walking off the 18th, it's like, oh, well, that's good finish. I was patting myself on the back. I'd finished off really nicely. Good week. Well done. Wow, you might make a playoff. And then in about a 5-minute sequence of events, all of a sudden it went from like, might make a playoff to I can only win this.
It was
now.
extraordinary.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was incredible.
So how aware were you of what Monty had done?
I wasn't aware. He was in front
of you.
He was in front. And 18 at Wingfoot's a bit of a dog leg.
Yeah.
So you couldn't really see. We saw him hit his second shot. And Monty's body language always kind of looked negative.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, true.
Sort of looking at his feet, sort of moping along.
Yeah.
You know? He wasn't one of those... Like Poulter, you can tell from 3 fairways away
he struts.
what score he's on, right?
Yeah.
And most guys are like that.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell with Monty. So he just hits his shot, puts his head down. And to be honest, I wasn't really paying attention. I was just... The 18th hole at Wingfoot's a hard fairway to hit, and I was just pretty nervous at that point. I just wanted to hit a good drive, but I had no idea until we got to the green and the scoreboard was on the side of the green. And we figured, we'd seen him miss a putt and there was a groan, so we figured he'd made bogey. So I was walking up to the green thinking I was on the same score as him. He'd finished at 5, I was at 5, and Phil was at 4 on the tee. I figured that he was on 5. It wasn't until we got up to the 18th green that, oh, wow. He finished it. He made double.
Yeah.
Now I've got to get this up and down, right? Because I can finish second on my own here at worst, you know. Yeah, even at the time, hitting the pitch shot, I was like, this is up and down for second on my own and maybe a playoff.
Do you think all that thought process helped? Would it have made it harder if you thought, well, if I get up and down here, I'll win?
There's definitely a difference. Like if you're the last group and you know what you have to do, there's definitely a difference. But I don't know if it's any easier or harder. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's easy. I'm just,
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe. I mean, I didn't have that opportunity. Didn't have that opportunity ever to have an up and down or a 2-putt from 40 feet or a 6-footer. I mean, I did it in other tournaments, but not in a major, so I don't know. But I was always, luckily, and I said, this has got nothing to do with practice or anything that I ever did. I was always a better putter and chipper the bigger the putt or the chip.
Because it engaged you.
Because it engaged me, yeah. We used to do these skills tests as kids. The sports science had started taking over and you'd do these skills tests and wedges to this target and you would have a score out of 100 or something. I mean, I'd finish last, but I'd beat them every weekend at the tournament.
I bet you were a hopeless practice round player, right?
Hopeless still to this day. It's actually counterproductive to play a practice round for me, unless someone wants to come and play for 50 and let's get competitive.
Yeah.
Which you can't do anymore because everybody's hitting 17 chips and caking their track man out onto the course and stuff. But yeah, I needed to be engaged. I just loved that. That was the point. Isn't that the point? The point is to be challenged.
Having peaked there, that would be, you look at your career, that's obviously it's the biggest thing you did.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't do it again. Is that a source of some regret?
A little bit, yeah. I sort of, it's that lack of engagement, like you just said. I would go off on tangents, and if I only ever played last rounds at tournaments, I would have always played well, But for whatever reason, you give me 2 weeks off and I'll just go try different stuff and maybe get bored and it's just not being engaged. It doesn't matter where the ball goes. And so you start thinking about random stuff, and then I'd get to the tournament on the Thursday and it would take me till Saturday to get my game back.
Yeah.
There would be the tournament rounds where I would find my form, not the range.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to diminish
No.
you did, because it's pretty impressive, but yeah.
Yeah. I feel like, as I said, because I feel like I had the wherewithal or the ability on the Sunday, I just sort of couldn't stay in form for long enough, because I would, I don't know, not lose interest, but I needed the focus. Once there's a little bit, you see it a little bit with Brooks. I'm not comparing myself to Brooks in any way. His best is infinitely better than mine. Yeah. But once he won that first major, it seemed like if it wasn't Sunday at a major, he just couldn't do it. Like he just no interest, like it's just he wanted to be good, but he just couldn't.
Yeah.
To me, it's similar. And there's lots of guys, look at Lee Jansen, unless it was a major or the Players' Championship or something, he didn't, it didn't sort of work out. And there's a lot of guys like that. Mm-hmm. And it is an engagement thing. No, there's no regrets. I mean, look, there's still time.
Well, exactly. No, I was just going to, that was my next question was, you're getting into playing more and you've been reasonably successful given where you're coming from the last few months. What is motivation? What motivation do you have now, and what's driving you into doing that? You still want to play, obviously.
Yeah, I want the moment. It's the moment. I mean, because you can play golf, tour golf, and the tour is probably not the best version of golf, not the most enjoyable version of golf. Just going to go play with your friends and playing for $50 and having a beer afterwards. I mean, that's fun. Getting really competitive, but in a loose, fun way, and bantering and chirping on each other or something. That to me is perfect golf. Tour golf, I could take or leave a little bit, but the moment, you need to play tour golf to get the rise out, to get that moment, and it's the moment that I would miss. So if I could, it'd be great to have that again a few times, It doesn't even matter. It could be a small tournament, big tournament. Doesn't matter. I'd love to get back and play some more majors and play some big stuff and getting in the mix. Because to me, it's less about the trophy on your shelf. It's more about the fun. The most fun I've ever had are those times, coming down the stretch in the match play, coming down the stretch in the US Open or any big tournaments. And when you're on those last 2 or 3 groups and it's all on and there's 3 guys tied and you've got a really tough 17th hole and you just hit that tee shot, it's me. That's it. That the moment. It's the drug for me is the moment, is the pressure and the situation, not really the prize. So I miss that. So if I can get, that's the dopamine rush for me.
Have you got any specifics for what lies ahead, or is it just let's see how good I can get sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways I'd be way better than I was before. As I said, I learnt a little bit about the tangents I used to get myself off onto and sort of trying weird stuff and not weird stuff. And probably from the outside looking in, it looks like, you'd never worked on anything, but I don't know. It's an engagement thing. In a lot of ways, I'd be a better golfer now than I was before. The putting isn't where it was in the 15 years ago, but everything else,
not doing it, I think.
That's probably just not doing it. Everything else is really good. I've had a fun time over my whole life, sort of playing around, finding my best way. I mean, the golf swing.
You've done a good job of using your celebrity in Australia. I mean, there's been events that have probably happened, more likely to happen because your name's been attached.
Yeah, it's been great to be down there. Yeah. I mean, I've been the only, I guess, high-profile sort of major level golfer floating around regularly in Australia.
There's not many Australian men have won majors. There's only about a dozen. It depends if you get into did Walter Travis count as an Australian or not? In that kind of thing.
No, but if things had gone different for Greg and he'd been floating around, or Finchie was floating around Australia, or Jason or Adam or Cam now, or like in Australia more often, I mean, they would have got it. But I was the major winner in Australia for the last few years, and it was good. It's been great. Yeah, I feel like my golf it's the journey to work out the golf swing. It becomes apparent after a while. Hopefully it becomes apparent that you're not trying to work out the golf swing, you're trying to work out yourself and how you can do it the best. Just this sort of lifelong pursuit to how can I get this down to one simple thing that if I sort of do or think, I'll be good every day. And if I can't get it down to one, can I get it down to two? If I can't get it down to two, can I get it down to three? Like you see, the guys who are really struggling, they're on 74 theories every swing, whereas Hogan was on one, and Monty was on one, and DJ's on one. Yeah. It's not even one thing. It's like how simple can I make this? Because it's so fun golf is so fun when you don't have to think about the golf swing. Yeah.
And when you're playing great, you don't think about anything.
And that's the most fun. Yeah. The least fun is thinking about 18 different things in your swing and just doing it, just scratching and clawing and trying to find something that works. Yeah. And you feel like you can get stuck in that pattern for years. I mean, most golfers play their whole life like that. But the freedom and the liberation to get to that point where it's just walk up and hit it, I'll never stop trying to do that. And I'm way closer to that now. I mean, I'm a long way from like having one simple unifying theory to my golf swing, but it's a fun thing to pursue, or to aim at.
Yeah. Last few minutes of this, we've got to get through the compulsory live golf question and compulsory ball rollback questions. So you can take them in whatever order you like.
Live, I think, is interesting. I think the PGA Tour has needed legitimate competition. I think they've been maybe not even intentionally, but they've become a bully a little bit through their own just natural success. They're very, very good at what they do. I mean, I'm a PGA Tour fan. I mean, I've benefited. It's an incredible thing that they do. And their product is so good that everybody wants to sponsor it and everybody wants to have a tournament. And there's only so many weeks in the year. They're a victim of their own greatness in a way. But this live has shown that they've doubled the prize money in a 12-month period. In less than 12 months, they doubled the prize money just through the threat of it, which is good for professional golfers. And it's good for golf because there's so many more eyes just on it and so many more DJs talking about it on the radio and it's on TV. And it's like all of a sudden pro golf, everyone's fighting over pro golf. That's good for golf because it's putting it higher up the newsreel. So that aspect of it I like. I think competition is healthy. It's unfolded in a really untidy way. And it's a shame that it's sort of a bit split at the moment. But
how do you think your boyhood hero is going to come out of this at the end? I mean, it's not going to. I don't think it's going to end well for Greg.
Unfortunately, he doesn't.
History's not going to be kind to him. Put it that way.
It doesn't seem that way. I think sometimes you wish he would run it through his head before he said it, and then do I really want to say it? I understand. And the irony of all this is the PGA Tour is shaping up to be exactly what he suggested 25, 30 years ago. So he was right. Yeah. Probably.
And Phil as well. I mean, a lot of what Phil was.
Absolutely. I mean, Norman, 20 or 30 years ago, came out and said, we need a list, a pile of elevated tournaments with the top 50 in the world. I mean, where are we now? We're there. We're what he suggested. Yeah. And I think he got a little bit bent out of shape and probably is a very, the reason he got so good is because you can't get this good unless you're a stubborn sort of person. I mean, you can't be good at golf unless you're stubborn. Yeah. Like, I'm going to work this out. I'm going to work this out. Yeah. So I think that sort of clouded his judgment a little bit. But it's sad that the PGA Tour is ending up with what he said was the right way to go, and he's ended up on the side which doesn't seem like it's going to win. But it's not about winning or losing.
I mean, they got a right good kicking in the arbitration thing with the European Tour.
Yeah, I don't understand that. If I was trying to be a legitimate competitor to get the best players in the world, I would have done it a bit more of a sneak attack, and I would have gone from underneath, and I would have done the Asian Tour, and I would have made the Asian
Tour and just 5 years of that,
and have gradually make those really, really big tournaments at PGA Tour level, and then gradually along the way saying, oh, we might put an elevated series on our Asian Tour, and then off you go. And all of a sudden it would have been, oh, there's 2 real choices, or 3 real choices with Europe, but like maybe there's 2 real choices. We'll see. It's not cool to see DJ and Brooks and Cam and Waco and Louis and all that not be able to play PGA Tour every week. That kind of sucks, but like good for them. I mean, they've made a pile of money, which is generational wealth, and they're still getting to play. And by all reports, the events are great fun to be at. I think until they can make their events mean something, I think they're going to struggle.
Well, that's the biggest problem for me is I really don't care who wins at this point.
And even to be fair, a lot of the PGA Tour events don't really mean that much.
No, that's another subject, yeah.
But they still get you a master start, and they mean something.
They're part of the establishment.
Yeah, they mean a little bit. But the most compelling viewing and the thing that we all like to, any sport or anything, are the moments that mean something. Like a Champions League semi-final is way more important than the second round of the season in the league, right? It's like it just is.
Yeah. Even
if it's the same 2 teams.
Yeah, exactly.
It just has to mean something. And like for them to sort of become like that legitimate other option, they have to create some meaning that's just because money isn't it. No one goes to the Masters for money.
No.
You could take the prize money away from the Masters, you'd have the same field.
Yeah.
Money's really nice and it's part of life, but money doesn't make anything mean anything.
You think that's crossed their mind here?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, at the Masters, they've got plenty to throw around. You know what I mean? And money doesn't buy prestige or meaning. It's got to mean something. Yeah. So if they can find that, if they can create some meaning, as I said, I think you need more than just the 14 events. I think the Asian Tour, if that was that tour's version, if the Live thing, what they're doing now, was the premium version of the big tour.
Well, I just think they got it in the wrong order.
Yeah, so... Look, I like the competition. I think it's been a little bit a shame, all this name calling and finger pointing, and I mean, and where the money comes from. I mean, I don't know how important that is because money comes from everywhere for everything, and it's a little hypocritical, I think, sometimes.
Well, other sports, I mean, the one God knows nobody, looks at what goes on in Saudi Arabia and thinks, well, that's okay. But the other sports have gone there, and there's not been hardly a ripple. I mean, Formula One and boxing and nobody seems to bother that much.
Yeah.
But golf, it's become this huge thing,
Which is, I think there's a little bit of hypocrisy there because I think if you actually understand the investment that Saudi Arabia make in America, and I mean, a lot of things that you buy on the supermarket shelves and products you use in America are probably fundamentally funded by Saudi. And my always thing is we're just getting our money back. I've been filling my car up for 30 years at the petrol station.
Yeah, it's one way to look at it, yeah.
We're just getting a little bit back, We've been giving money that way, and it's got to come back eventually, and it's just coming back in a different way. Yeah, I don't know, but we'll see. I don't like the fractured sport, but I like the idea that there's competition. So, and I think there's room for everybody. 52 weeks is a long time. There's a lot in a year. You don't need 43 tournaments or something to make a tour and basically make, if you play those, you're not allowed to play anything else. Like, I don't know if that's actually perfect situation.
Yeah.
So
it'd be interesting to see what the DP World Tour, what decisions they make in the next month or so with regard to the players who've gone to Live.
Yeah.
There's strong indications or some indications that they'll let them back in, on a one-by-one basis. I mean, like Martin Keimer, who's huge in Germany, they let him play in the BMW International because the sponsor will want him there, and that there could be plenty of examples of that happening.
I think it'll eventually come back together. Naturally, it might take a while, and it's hard to see like how that would look. But
I think the sponsors have got a big role in this. As I say, the BMW is a perfect example because I know that they want Martin Keimer in their event, and if they want him, they'll probably get him.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, professional golf is about money. Otherwise, we'd be playing the British Am, right?
Yeah.
The money always sort of dictates. I mean, all of life is sort of guided by financial things, and so golf's going to be the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. You just want to see the best players play together all the time because then it does start meaning something when number 2 in the world is playing against number 4 in the world, and like to have like Cam Smith and DJ and that not coming down the stretch every weekend against Scotty Scheffler and Justin Thomas is disappointing, So it'd be nice that it wouldn't be a permanent situation, that it'll be like this.
And the ball roll back, I mean, you and I, we talked about this for your latest column in Golf Australia. So, give a brief summary of your feeling on where we're headed on that. I
mean, I think it's so much more complicated Well, first, philosophically, I think golf, it probably was potentially more sensible to say use the old course as a yardstick. This is the Rosetta Stone of golf. Let's just use the traditional tees at the old course and make that make sense. And that's kind of the distance the ball should go.
Yeah.
And we'll build golf around that, because it just kind of made sense for 300 or 400 years. And then all of a sudden, but saying that, we were going to get here anyway. I mean, sports science has taken over. Golf got more athletic. It wasn't just the ball. It actually wasn't the ball at all, I don't think. It was the big drivers and the light shafts and the big sweet spot.
Just that the ball's easy fix. That's the thing.
Yeah, but it doesn't fix it because...
it disguises the...
It doesn't fix it because golf courses, once distance sort of jumped a little bit with titanium and the Pro V1, all of a sudden everybody added 1,000 yards to their golf course, and they made length disproportionately advantageous. It used to be sort of balanced. It was like important to be. It was nice to be long, but it wasn't. Yeah. You could make up for it in other areas.
You're going to dominate because
they've taken out the ability to make up for it in other areas. So you have to be long.
Yeah.
So now everybody, kids, swinging speed sticks and like in the gym doing power lifts and stuff, just so they can swing it at 130 miles an hour. That's never going to go away anymore. That's happening. So whatever you do to the equipment, they're going to work it out. And I think golf is going really well, and maybe the purist in you and me and some people who love the old course in Royal Melbourne and persimmon and metal spikes and all that kind of pine for the good old days. But just
You're gonna
because...
make me cry here. Come on.
But I think the perfect analogy is just because a music sounds better on a vinyl record doesn't mean it's better. Like, it does probably sound better with a nice setup and you get it out and it smells nice and you put it down and it crackles and it just sounds so beautiful. It's kind of nice to have every song of all time on Spotify on your phone, you know, and have it choose your music for you. And like, it's kind of better. It's like having power windows in a car.
Yeah.
Well, when we're lazy, but it's really kind of better to just push a button and do the wind up, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense that we have to have 8,000 yard courses for pros. But the reality is the game for the average person hasn't changed much. Maybe they can hit the drive ahead a bit easier, which is better, and hybrids and stuff. It's a little bit easier, but bifurcation I think is a terrible direction because golf.
Do you not think we're there already?
Well,
you and I have played it. I mean,
but no, that's not the point.
We don't play the same game anymore.
No, but I think where I think it's a bad call is that as much as people think we just get paid money because we're on TV every weekend, we don't really. People who like successful people, CEOs, successful businessmen, men and women, athletes all around the world, they all want to play golf and they want to play it well and they can't. And they think and they just love, even I love watching the best golfers hit golf shots because it's just there's something really special about watching a great player play golf.
Yeah.
There's something mystically magic about it. That is why we play golf for so much money.
Well, I'm like
because
that
we do something that people.
You know, I can watch things that I always use Torval and Dean as the example. I mean, ice dancing. I mean, ice dancing.
True, but you watch ice dancing.
But you watch them and you think,
you watch it once every 4 years and you think it's great. You don't. They don't have a.
No, but you could appreciate the point is that you could appreciate just how good it was when you were watching it.
Yeah, but I think golf has that spell more than anything else. You know, it casts that spell, and the fact that you can go down the street and when you come and play a pro-am with Tiger Woods, you're playing the identical game to him theoretically by the rules. There's a massive appeal to that. That and the other side of things is that why is, say, Titleist going to put in any money to R&D a ball they can't sell? And why is anybody going to buy a ball that I use when I'm using a different one? It completely changes.
Do you not think that it will evolve the same way that when your country and my country, everywhere except America, had the change to from the small ball to the big ball 40 years ago.
That's different though. That was bifurcating. That was actually bringing the rules together.
Yeah, but we all did it. Nobody went, oh, I'm not doing that.
I don't think making the ball go shorter would ruin the game. I think splitting up the rules wouldn't help. Would actually create a lot more issues. And to me, it feels like a power grab from the authorities wrestling a little bit power back from the manufacturers, because the manufacturers are quite powerful in golf now, and I don't think they like it. And I think it's more of an ego thing than a reality thing.
Could be, yeah.
Because if you actually look at the numbers they come out, it's a science experiment. And if you can have a science experiment to come up with a rule, as has been proven over the last 20 or 30 years, the manufacturers are just going to find a way around that rule. And like Tiger said the other day, we're just going to get 4-degree drivers or do something really different, and we're going to work it out.
Yeah. You see, my worry
cannot
is, though,
stop people swinging it at 130 miles an hour anymore. You just can't.
Yeah, but if we don't do something, I mean, my worry is that the old line that golf at its best is an art, not a science. I mean, we're going to lose the art side of it almost completely.
Well, we probably have already anyway. But you haven't, though, because when we
talked about Tiger at Royal Melbourne, that was an art. That wasn't a science.
No, and it wouldn't matter what ball you used or what clubs you used at Royal Melbourne. It would be an art, because the right place to hit it is the right place to hit it. I think we need more Royal Melbournes.
Yeah.
And I think if we'd played Royal Melbourne and the Old Course and Riviera and all the great courses, and we'd only ever played those, no one would go home and swing speed sticks. They'd go home and work on fades and draws and shape and spin rates. And we're only hitting it so far because they're making it so you have to hit it far. If you made distance proportionately relevant again, then we would all go work on different stuff and the march wouldn't be on. But you've got coaches telling kids, I don't care where it goes, just swing it as fast as you can. That was never a thing.
No.
I think the golf course, the reactive tiger proofing or whatever, and adding 1,000 yards to every golf course back there 20 or so years ago, that was the mistake, not really the equipment stuff.
Yeah.
Because the equipment evolves to perform on the course that we have. So I think you shape the way golf is played by presenting the right playing areas.
Yeah, I mean, I bang on about this constantly. I think you've heard me say it a million times, but the first hint you can see that the course has been screwed with is that the bunkers are in the rough.
Yeah.
Which means that you're trying to hit it between the goalposts. You're not trying to, there's no shaping involved. You just, can you execute?
And it's a bit soft, and the softer you make, again, it's this, everything seems to be, the reactive stuff seems to be the opposite thing. You make it so we've got to make it soft, otherwise the ball will run too far, Geoff, and the course will play too short. Well, if you make it firm, the ball's going to run into the trees. At Royal Melbourne, 330 yards is a hindrance because you can't hit a fairway because it just keeps running into the trees. Yeah. So all of a sudden, I think it might be a shame. If you set courses like that, we wouldn't be hitting as many drivers, but I don't think that matters because you're seeing proper golf get played. I think the golf course is the number one area to look at, and the way you set it up, not brown it off per se, but make the ball do something when it hits the ground, have interesting slope and interesting setups and firmish greens, and then you can make golf where position matters, not just distance. I mean, distance should always be an advantage. It's a massive skill, and the best golfers are the ones who hit it the furthest. But it should be proportionate, and it shouldn't be every PGA tournament.
Overwhelming, you know.
Every PGA tournament we leave, you're going home on Sunday night, and you're thinking, "Geez, I'd be so much better if I could get 20 yards." That never was true 20 years ago. It was like you'd go home, it'd be nice to hit it further, but I really need to work on that little 60-yard pitch shot, or geez, I can't move the ball left to right very well at the moment. Like, I got to work on that. Like, you don't do that. It's just like, how far can I hit it? And that's a direct reaction to the courses that we're trying to play. So I think shortening courses and firming them up would stop us trying to hit at 330 because it wouldn't be a thing anymore. It would be less of a thing. It would be a balanced thing. But again, the cat's out of the bag. Cars get faster. Like, everything gets bigger, life moves along, and golf, evidenced by the people who play it, they might not like it for the reasons you like it, but they like it, you know, and it's a good game. I just don't like the splitting the rules thing, you know.
Interesting. Anyway, on that happy note, we will leave it. Thank you for your time. 2006 US Open champion, Geoff Ogilvy. Thanks very much.
No worries.
No question, one of the game's more interesting thinkers, and because of that, we sometimes forget just what a joy it was and is to watch Geoff play. Beautiful, languid golf swing. Not playing terribly back on the tour this year, it must be said too, so we might even get to see him bob up on the TV at some point. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Well, there are multiple paths to the professional game, and while Ogilvy's story is not atypical, our next guest's is. Thomas Mesra started life behind the Iron Curtain in what is now the Czech Republic. His passion was for cars, a passion that led him all over the world, racing everything from open wheelers to V8s here in Australia. But along the way, Mesra found golf, and at the age of 50, his second sport career began when he qualified for the Australian Over 50s Legends Tour.
I was 30 years old and purely by accident. And, from a first day, I tried the game. I never forget that. I was playing in England. We went on public course and heck around for about 6 hours, and 150 shots later, about 10 lost balls, we finished, and I got hooked on it from that day.
That's 1988 Bathurst 1000 winner Thomas Mesra. Next time on The Thing About Golf.